Number of speaker cards. Mr. Herman on every item. Good morning. There you are. Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Armando. All right. Come on up on every item. You got 2 minutes, and then you have a minute for general public comment.
Okay, I'll do my general public comment now.
Whatever order you choose. That's fine. So go ahead and give them the minute for general public comment.
It's fucked up when we need housing. It's really fucked up when you go to a plum meeting.
They're items under this purview of this committee only.
The safety of the plum meeting is a result of bad management because you have people very upset waiting to speak for 1 fucking minute and you disrupted the meeting. This is general public comment.
It's not whatever you want to talk about. It's under the purview of this committee.
Let me stick to the fucking item, Brown Act violator, motherfucker. Now Electric Corin and the little pussy Englander on item 1, Fire Department's Administrative City Administrative Officer, Chief Legislative Entity Report. Fuck you, Englander, on that one. Then I go to item number 4, using what emergency management current practice of protecting the public. A fucking vehicle ramming system is not a way to protect people. Because if it goes off course, it's going to kill someone and injure them to the point of no return. Are you listening, Biggers? You should listen because then you're going to say I'm off topic. Dwarf. All right. He's not listening. Him and the Silvertongue cop. Then I go into item number 7, Memorial Justice Assistant Grant, JAG. Well, we don't need it because we have Carol Bose Goodson, the TMO, who represents the TMU, which is a temporary restraining order and threat management unit. Maybe you should use the RAM to ram it up your ass on that vehicle. Then I still have every item on the item, $2,000 reward for an incident apprehension reward. Well, why is it $2,000? Where's the $50,000? You got Steve Soberoff, the fucking billionaire who can't pay for his fucking dog license, the asshole. Why not give $50,000? Then you got the Los Angeles Police Department report relative to payment of graffiti. It's not graffiti, assholes. It's not graffiti. It's art. We love art, we want more art, and we want to see art. Let people graffiti art the city of Los Angeles because it's the best interest of the public to know that we still need housing and not the, oh, thank you, Miss Monica Rodriguez, for showing up late. It's 8:42 for the record. Why don't fucking people show up?
Don't address it. You're off topic. These are not on items on the committee. That's your last warning. That's your last warning. You've been warned 3 times. Your time's up.
Training.
You can remove the
budget. I got 17 fucking
Mr. Herman, please escort him out. He's disrupting the meeting. Please go ahead and escort him out. Thank you very much. Thank you. Morning.
Wake-up call.
One day I just had to record that so I can, it's my alarm clock in the morning. Wake up to that. Armando is continuing to disrupt the meeting, yelling as he's walking out, as he's always doing that. All right. Thank you,
Is
Sergeant.
the MEU, do we have an MEU representative here?
Yeah, do we have?
Chairman?
I won't even touch that one. So, and for those of you, any newcomers here to this, never been to a committee meeting before, a council meeting? Welcome to First Amendment rights, and something we do cherish and protect and fight for. And want to particularly thank the men and women who have served this country overseas and paid the ultimate sacrifice to ensure that we protect our First Amendment. So thank you for them. With that, we do have another card on item 2, but we're going to hear that item anyway. So, colleagues, I have a number of items that I'd like to ask for consent. Items 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So I'd like to hear items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Move the balance.
All right, so moved. All right, without objection, that'll be the order. Those are unanimous. We'll adopt any and all technical corrections or CAO reports with those as well. All right, so We do have a card on 2, but I believe we're waiting for somebody from Fire Department to show up on that. So let's go ahead and take item 1 first. Oh, you know, actually, I'm going to take a step back. If there is anybody here on item 10, I do have a quick question on item 10. Let's reconsider that and put that before us on a quick question on item 10.
Good morning. Richard T. Fank, Executive Director, Board of Police Commissioners.
Good morning. Thank you. On item 10, my question is, so these are adjustments as we normally do through the course of action when we look through our actual costs for recovery.
Correct, sir.
And I typically never have any issues with those. I might have a question or two, and I do. One of the questions, it relates to the false alarm fees.
Yes, sir.
And which we also have on the agenda item that's coming up, and that's why I wanted to call some attention to this for the fire department. And the false alarm fees, you actually have a formula working with, I believe, the CAO to figure out your actual cost and response to a false alarm, and that's where you adjust based on the cost of sending officers to the location and back.
Correct.
Right? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that's how it's calculated, because I'm going to get to that with the fire department, and as they knew where I was going on that one. All right. My second one was on the solicitation for nonprofits to get a permit, and the permit they have to mail.
Right.
I believe, I don't have the entire report, it's like 19 pages, but it was like $42 and jumping up to $62 or $64.
It's going to from 46 to 62. Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. I'm hesitant on that. It's minor, but for some of the nonprofits, that's actually more than their postage for a small mailer in some cases. And the requirement, I'm not sure, how many do they actually have to mail out to have to get that permit first?
This is for a dedicated solicitation campaign for a 501c3. So an example would be March of Dimes as a direct mail campaign. That would be the type, and you'll see the little white insert in your mailing when you receive
Sure.
it.
So when you say direct mail campaign, if they have their own internal list and they're only going to their database of, that's still a direct mail campaign?
They don't have to have a charitable solicitation.
That's only if they purchase a list? Or?
They don't purchase a list from us at all. We don't have a
No,
list.
no, I don't mean from you, right. But what's the difference between soliciting their actual donor list versus going out to an unsolicited list, if you will, a purchased and acquired list, or what?
I believe the difference is that when they do a direct mail-out campaign, it's going to a wide range of folks who have never given to them before. It's based on addresses that they identify through just the
That's
way
what
they-
would trigger it? Okay.
Exactly.
So they're already...
If they have a list of 200 donors who have given to them in the past,
Okay.
they're mailing direct to those 200 donors who have given in the past, then that's different from a direct mail campaign that goes in a wide breadth to everybody.
That's why we get so many of these, certainly as council members, to 501c3s, and then some have them and some don't.
That's correct, sir.
Got it.
Yes, sir.
All right, so if we're really looking at somebody who's going to be going wide, and that's really an insignificant, minor amount.
Correct. And it
versus
also-
some of the smaller, okay.
It lets the individual donor who receives that broad mailing know that
Right.
they are a viable 501c3.
Sure.
Because they're identified through us and through the State Attorney General on the State Attorney General's website.
Right.
They're in good standing with their tax returns, and it's a reliable donation to give to.
Right. Okay, well, Richard, is there anything you don't know off the top of your head? Okay, so...
I've
I
done
can
this
call you
too
up on
long,
almost
sir.
anything.
I've done it
You're
too
just
long.
like, all right. Any questions on these? I'm fine with that change in fee then. It seems fairly minor. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so we'll go ahead and move that item as well. Back to the agenda. So let's go ahead and hear item 5.
Item 5 is a report from the City Administrative Officer and City Attorney relative to a grant acceptance package from the California Board of State and Community Corrections Proposition 47 Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Grant Program.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? So we're finally starting to get some Prop 47 grants coming in.
Yes.
Not enough, but it's a start, finally. It's a start. It's a little bit. And we're all grasping at straws on this and trying to figure out now what. So according to the report, an RFP is going to go out to service providers. What's the process? Will we get a chance to see what that RFP is and what we're looking for? Is my first question. And my second question is, what are we doing to ensure that this money is going to be spent regionally? And particularly a portion of it, for sure, in the San Fernando Valley, but regionally. There's a need everywhere. And historically and traditionally, if they follow the same pattern that other grants or deployment with ComStat works, we won't see anything. And so I want to have this discussion. This is the beginning and the first, but there's more to come. So if you can walk us through that, that would be great.
So if I could just give some background on how the project was designed. So the project we applied for is called LA Door, and it was designed over a year and a half. It was designed for South LA, and there's a number of reasons for that. We know the needs everywhere. But South LA does have the highest density of people affected by Prop 47 in the city. It also has the highest health paucity, the highest number of people exiting custody. 2 years ago, when we started looking at designing a project, seeking these funds, there was a lot of support from leadership from South Bureau, and we had the help of Community Coalition to do some of the community engagement on how the project should be designed. And so the ultimate project came out of a culmination of a year and a half of research and doing a pilot project in the area to test something similar to the LEAD model.
Right.
And all of that went into forming the project as it is. So that said, half of the fund is going to our service partner that had been on the original project from the get-go, designing how this works and building the relationship with LAPD.
And I get that. And that's traditionally how we've always done it, which is why I call this special. What's changed in this world significantly since that has happened? And that's one of the problems when because some of these things are so complicated, and you've got to really work with service partners and then apply for grants, and they have taken a couple years till they finally get here, and the issue has grown, and we really need to focus on where the heart of that is and sort of ground zero of it, and that makes sense. But on the flip side, what's happening in the rest of the world, in the city of LA, is that these issues are growing exponentially everywhere else, and in fact has the fastest growing rate in the valley, and so we're constantly 2 or 3 years behind, and we can't predict. I understand that. I mean, if you had a crystal ball 2 years ago, maybe we would be looking at some of these things a little differently. But here we are today, ready to start accepting and funding the programs, with perhaps no effort forward looking at what's changed in the last couple of years. Maybe we are, maybe we aren't. But I have deep concern because this is once again, and I'll just say it, the valley not getting its fair share. And yet the increase there is the fastest growing in the city of LA, with no funds or resources. And we don't have a shelter. We don't have, I mean, there are some serious issues. And so I'm trying to figure out how to address that before we start going down this path. I'm going to just open it up to my colleagues. Monica, if you want to.
No, just to, I completely agree with you, Councilmember, in particular in my district where we're facing a lot of the same challenges, and disproportionately we tend to not have the same amount of attention paid, particularly on these issues. What are some of the thoughts going forward, to ensure that we have equity and that the distribution of these types of programs are actually going to be implemented in our collective districts in the San Fernando Valley?
So I have 2 comments on that. One is that we are trying different pilots with different resources in the valley right now. Those pilots are just getting launched. We're bringing substance use services and making those available on certain Prop 47 offenses that are coming through court out of the Van Nuys branch. We're also trying a unique pilot out of the North Hollywood division. We're trying a chronic offender project to try to address some of the people we see the most all over the city, but it's prioritized based on who's picking up the most cases. So it's a citywide project, but it will certainly capture the people who are picking up the most cases by my office in the Valley. So that's happening now. Additionally,
On those pilot programs, because it's the first time that I've heard of them,
they're pilot and they're not launched yet. They've been in development. We're hoping for a launch soon.
so they're not even launched pilots. They're just in development
The service,
to launch a pilot.
services in the courtroom will be launched on the 5th.
Okay. Can we get a briefing on all of those
Sure,
as soon as possible? And I think probably all the Valley Council members for sure want them.
certainly.
So we could have that scheduled for the next Public Safety Committee meeting and just have it on the agenda. It would be great. And we can get a full presentation. I mean, this is obviously the number one issue we're all dealing with. So,
Yes.
yeah.
And
very,
we're trying
very
everywhere we
appreciative.
can. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that said, we're hoping that this model is successful and it can be grown citywide. We're really hopeful that this level of direct outreach that we're trying to do, focused on areas that have been historically high for arrests and historically high for homelessness, we're hoping that looking at that as mobile outreach target areas, separate and aside from law enforcement, will have an impact at the same time as we're offering pre-booking diversion on people who are arrested, at the same time as we're enhancing what's going on in court.
Right.
So we're looking at this at a number of angles.
Excellent. Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in hearing through calls and from my former colleagues who had the boots on the ground, patrol officers, this is Prop 47 and the issue of the reoccurring of quality of life crimes, thefts, and such has really impacted our neighborhoods throughout the city of Los Angeles. And it was myself and Marquise Harris Dawson, our colleague, who really demanded the state to make sure these dollars are filtered into local municipalities. We're here, and I feel that what's before us is a drop in the bucket, but it's something that we can believe it gets started. Do we foresee future dollars coming through to the city of Los Angeles, and aside from the $6 million that's before us today?
I hope so. The BSCC has said so.
I'm sorry, who said so?
The Board of State and Community Corrections, who's administering the grant for the state. And in addition to our $6 million award, the mayor's office also received $6 million, and the county received $20.
So tell me about that. I also noticed that in the report that the County of Los Angeles, the diversion department, it's actually the diversion and reentry, Office of Diversion and Reentry will be accepting $20 million. What's going to be our partnership collaboration with our partners at the LA County?
So we've been working pretty closely throughout the application process. We all knew that we would each be applying. We wanted to ensure that we weren't, we're looking at the same population at separate points in the system so that we wouldn't be directly competing with one another. We had assurances from the state that any good project would get funded. And so we did a lot of collaborating at the outset. The mayor's project focuses specifically, and I don't want to speak too much for them, their Office of Reentry put together a great application for an employment-focused project that provides wraparound services for persons seeking employment. I have less of a firm grip on the county's project. It mostly goes towards expanding housing and expanding services that already exist. It touches people that are coming through the court system. It touches reentry population, and it expands county housing services. Judge Espinosa can answer more specifics about that. But we did work to ensure that our populations, although they might touch the same type of person, we're hitting them at different points in the system. So this project for the city attorney is focused primarily on outreach to homeless persons and people who are arrested for.
I just want to echo the chairman's concerns as well as far as obtaining some community feedback, municipal feedback on how to allocate these dollars. Crime has no borders, as we know. What impacts San Pedro can clearly impact the valley. So I agree that we have to look at some equity in disseminating these dollars. I also agree with you, Mr. Chairman, on measuring our success and effectiveness as we move forward and how these dollars are being spent. And your idea is to come back, Mr. Chairman, here in this committee to see how the program's operating?
I am. In fact, I'm going to add to it and ask not only on the pilots that are going to be coming forward and what are the metrics and how are we going to be measuring those things, but also the Office of Reentry to come and have one presentation before all of us so we understand the strengths and weaknesses of those programs moving forward and how to start collaborating through our offices directly with them. And so we'll definitely have that
I think we have
presentation.
to really respond to the voters of this state. You know, a recent op-ed piece, I forget who put it out. The headline was, voters were sold a bag of goods. And that's something that we need to address and really instill that trust.
I think I wrote that headline.
Was that you, Mr.
No,
Chairman? Okay.
I would have.
But really to instill that faith and trust in the electorate as well. So I wanted to make sure that you know, we've waited this long while they were debating the state legislature on how much money is going to come down to filter down to the municipalities. I know the California League of Cities took an active role as well to demand the state to really get those cost savings down to these impacted communities so that we can get these lives turned around and also address the quality of life crimes that are occurring in our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you. Yeah, the governor guaranteed $120 million year one. So here's $6 million years later. Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the report. So I think we're dealing with the unintended consequences of Prop 47, which I was vehemently against, by the way, for the record. And I think it's a disaster. So what that did was it took away court-ordered deferment, drug deferment requirements for those who are arrested for drug possession. And what we're left is insufficient funding, but better than nothing, as Mr. Buscaino said, for an initial sort of program where the focus is outreach from the city attorney's office. I think that's wholly insufficient. We do outreach. That's what the HOPE teams do. That's what my office does. We work with LASA. We work with PATH Ventures. We do outreach forever, all day long. And unless there is some arm twisting to get these addicts into programs, it's going to be worthless. It'll be $6 million down the drain. So I don't know. I know your hands are tied because it's the law of the land. Unless we can repeal Prop 47 entirely, I think we have a real serious problem. And speaking on behalf of the 13th District, I think we have the third highest homeless population and a significant increase since the passage of Prop 47. I don't know about you colleagues, but my homeless encampments are full of opioid-addicted individuals, heroin and meth rampant and increasing. So we're always trying to play catch-up. I don't mean to be giving a speech here. I'm just expressing my frustration about the abject failure of Prop 47. So I think my question would be, when might we expect another grant to come through?
So this grant is for 3 years, and we'd have to reapply again, and it would be dependent on what funds are available in the state.
So not for 3 years.
For this fund. We're seeing the same problems that everyone's seeing. We're the prosecutors in court trying to seek sentences and get consequences on cases when we're having a really hard time doing that. And so we're looking at this at every point we can, and because of the shift in our toolkit, we're making a lot more efforts to work with things on the front end as well and have a more direct relationship with police and how we're interacting on the street with folks that we're seeing who come into court on a Prop 47 case. So we're looking at this everywhere we can also. It's not enough money. You can only do it in one area at a time. So this is for 3 years. We're very interested in, if we're seeing any effect with this project, we're interested in growing it to wherever it's needed most. And it's just a matter of finding the funding and showing the results until then.
Well, I appreciate all your work. And Mr. Chair, I would make one recommendation for the report back, and that is, what are our state legislators doing to amend Prop 47 in the way that they legally can to reintroduce forced drug diversion programs for those arrested for drug violations, even if they are misdemeanors or narcotics violations?
Oh, man. We'll add that as well.
That supposedly was being worked on a couple of years ago,
and
I'm hearing crickets about that now. So unless our state legislators act, we need to talk about repealing Prop 47 across the state, in my view.
Got my support. Okay, so with that, one more question on, before I turn it over to Mr. Ruge. This is a grant that we had to apply for. It's not a local return, as promised that Prop 47 savings would actually give us a local return, particularly AB 109 savings, which we really haven't seen, would be a local return. But we have to apply for it as a grant.
That's correct.
Wow.
There was a requirement, so to make the grants more competitive,
Right.
the stronger the percentage of funds that you could pass through to local CBOs increase your level.
That's
of
insanity.
competitiveness. So
Okay.
we have about a 77% pass through to nonprofits.
Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for bringing this up. It's good to finally see the state giving us money to fulfill the promise of Prop 47. And I think my colleagues exhaustively asked all the questions, but I just want to thank you for applying for this, and I look forward to seeing this program.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and move this item as presented. And then we'll ask that on the next Public Safety Committee meeting or the one soon after, depending on the agenda, we'll ask for an update on the 47 pilots, Prop 47 pilots that are going to be put together, and as well as a presentation from the Office of Reentry, and any updates, legislative updates on what the California State Legislature is doing to tweak and amend, maybe tweak's the wrong word, on Prop 47. All right, thank you. Really? All right. With that, it's too early in the morning. With that, next item is item 2, and we have...
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I believe you had a card on item 5?
Oh, we had a card on item 5. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. A card on item 5, Pete White, before we actually move that item. Pete White.
So this is Pete White with the Los Angeles Community Action Network. It's hard to miss the disdain on folks' face when we bring up Prop 47 in this room. It's quite interesting when we talk about Prop 47. We're talking about 60% plus of voters who approve the idea that treatment, not incarceration, is what heals our community. We then move on, and that's 2014. We move on to 2016, and Prop 57, Buscaino, voters also approved the idea that we needed to reduce our insistence, right, upon, and I see you, can I hold my time? Buscaino, can I hold my time?
I can hear you.
Because it's quite interesting that you're showing your cell phone when I'm trying to give you information in terms of the voters of the state of California and what they felt about criminal justice reform. I will also say, just in terms of the voters, it is irresponsible for these members in the committee to continue.
Thank you. Thank you. Your time is up, sir. So
My time is not up.
Well, sir, we have to give everybody the same amount of equal time per the rules.
I would say,
But thank you very much.
Respect, so
Thank
the
you.
next time we're
Thank you.
talking about
I heard every word. Thank you very much.
giving false
Okay, sir, I'm going to have to ask you to either the sergeant to help you out. You're disrupting the meeting now. You can have a seat and still join us unless you want to disrupt the meeting.
Mr. Chair, if I can, I know we approved
Okay, excuse me. You're still disrupting the meeting. All right, thank you very much.
If I can, I know we have the staff here. As far as, again, dissemination, and I know we approved this item, but
Yes.
a quick question, and as far as disseminating dollars and looking at population, this may be a state issue, but in looking at the county of Orange County Healthcare Agency, a county that serves a population of 3.1 million people, was also given the same amount as we were. We were a city of over 4 million people. So again, that's something I believe we can demand the state to look at our residents and the population to up some of these grant dollars that come filter into the city of LA.
That's a good point. No, and thanks for finding that on your cell phone and pointing it out. So we'll go ahead and move the item now, and that'll be unanimous. Thank you. All right, next item. We'll go ahead and go into item 1.
Item 1 is a motion, Englander Krikorian, relative to the fire department, to report with recommendations on implementing a false alarm fee that would provide for cost recovery.
Good morning, council members.
Good morning.
City Attorney. Rod Suter, Battalion Chief, LA City Fire Department, Fire Prevention Bureau. I could just read through what their plan is. We're doing on this, and we can have questions if you'd like.
Yeah, can you speak into the microphone, please? We can't hear you.
Okay. You hear me now?
Just pull it a little closer.
Yeah.
Or speak up.
Okay. I'll just read through what our plan is on this, and if you have some questions, that'd be
Great,
good.
thank you.
Okay, so the LFD was tasked with creating an unwanted alarm program, also known as the false alarm program, which included developing a false alarm fee that would provide for cost recovery of the resources associated with responding to recurring unwanted alarms. Our overall goal is to reduce unwanted alarms, thus allowing fire resources to be available for critical incidents that will save lives and properties. Education to the building owners and the alarm companies is our top priority. We want the building owners, them, to repair their alarm systems, thus reducing unwanted alarms. So we've looked at this, it's been going on for several years now, and we're coming up with a good plan here. It's a two-pronged approach, which I came up with, or the fire department's come up with. Our short-term goal is we've developed our in-first system, which is what our station captains input when they go on these calls, enter the in-first system. We've developed those, and that's been implemented, and that was done in November 2015 to get those proper codes so we can see what actual alarms are going on. Next thing we did August 1st of this year, we implemented a new dispatch algorithm to send the appropriate resources to these automatic alarms, these false alarms, and try to attempt to stop duplicating the resources going on the same call. So that started like August 1st of this year, and we are going to do a 30-day analysis of that to see if it's reduced the overall calls going to these and the number of resources going there. And then our third goal is I'm working with the city attorney's office and the administrative citation enforcement program, and we're going to be sending out notices to these problem buildings and let them know that they need to do Reg 4 testing. We're going to get them on board. We're going to be tracking that. And if they continue to not be fixing their alarm system, we'll be bringing them in for a hearing, and then they'll be subject to an ACE citation. And then our fourth goal is we're going to initiate a 90-day fire watch program in designated battalions in the city, specifically downtown and out in the valley, where we have high automatic alarms. And we're going to get the fire companies to go out, and they see these buildings that are having problems. They'll put them on fire watch. They'll notify the Fire Prevention Bureau. We'll take it from there, and we'll get those buildings to do their Reg 4 testing, go through the compliance engine, and that should eliminate those alarms also. Our long-term goal is to work with the city attorney's office also to develop an unwanted alarm ordinance that mirrors LAPD's false alarm program. This will allow for fees for getting alarm permits, which we don't have at this time, and it also allow for penalties for multiple alarms to the same buildings. So we're working under the city attorney's office to develop that. That's going to be our long-term goal. In addition, we're going to piggyback onto a contract that Pasadena Fire just got awarded to a private company to track those unwanted alarms, and that way we can have them do all the tracking and managing and billing, and it'll be shared resources from shared contract with the private company and the city. And that's why we're trying to attack these alarms.
If I could.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for the report.
Yes, sir.
So we get on average 12 to 15,000 false alarms to the fire department a year.
That's correct.
That's more than one every single hour, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We're rolling out the fire department, and it used to be every resource. Now we've limited it a little bit and scaled it back. But we roll out, if you can imagine, Code 3, lights and sirens, putting lives in jeopardy, not only the public's, but the fire department personnel, every single hour, minimum, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Police department has a system in place already. They have a vendor. They have been doing it for years. In fact, just upped their fees based on their cost analysis today. They have a false alarm school. It's nothing to recreate the wheel on. And the motion that I put on this was 5 years ago. We spend millions of dollars of taxpayer funds, not to mention we're taking resources offline and putting other lives at risk. In fact, I would venture to say lives have probably been lost over the last 5 years, without question, because a resource wasn't there on time. And we've had those discussions in this committee as well, where we've had to deploy additional resources from further locations because other locations that were closer were tied up responding to false alarms. This is insane. I know the fire department is really busy on a lot of things. And we've been struggling to get through our data analysis and FireStat and getting everything up and running. But this isn't recreating a wheel. This is something that already exists within the police department. It's been great for years, and it substantially reduces false alarms, significantly, where the fire department's false alarms keep going up every year. It's not been a priority, clearly. And to suggest that we're still going to look for vendors, and this is the ultimate phase, and coming up with an administrative citation program where the police department actually just has a fine and a structure for it. We haven't, I believe, even done an analysis on costs, on what an actual cost is for full recovery. We don't have a fine structure for it. This is years behind.
Yes, sir.
So, colleagues, what I'd like to do is move this out of the fire department because it's not getting done. It's definitely not a priority. And move it over to the CAO's office and ask them to take this over immediately and implement an exact program of what the police department does. Because what we're really talking about is significant and millions of dollars that beyond putting people's lives at risk, and it's not getting done out of the fire department. It's one of the biggest disappointments, quite frankly. And it's very upsetting and frustrating that for 5 years we've been talking about this and nothing's really been done. And so I'd like to move this to the CAO to take it over and come back with an immediate implementation plan to just get this done.
No objection here, but Mr. Chair, I have a quick
Yes.
question. What's
sir.
the most common reason for false alarms, and what entity is most responsible for the highest number of false alarms?
Well, they're all across the board, but we have, malicious alarms. The alarm system's not hooked up correctly. People smoking on their balconies, things like that. That they're going out for those type of alarms. And then the entities, we're sending our energy companies or truck companies out there to take a look at those. But it's across the board from new construction to faulty alarm systems.
Where we saw a tremendous increase when we started doing the analysis on this 6 or 7 years ago is when PD started fining for false alarms, and a lot of the alarm companies realized that they don't want to get their clients mad, so they deploy fire because there's no alarm fee, and that's where we started really seeing a shift, and a lot of people that we respond to don't even have an alarm permit, and PD's got a separate structure for that, if they have a permit or if they don't have a permit, to get people in compliance. So this is something we've been battling for years. And anything else on this, colleagues? All right, so the instruction will be to move this to the CAO's office for the CAO to report back.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond?
No. If we could, because I got other items and I want to get to this. This has been 5 years, guys. And quite frankly, all your resources that are here there's probably a lot of other important things to do. So we'll go ahead and have the CAO's office put this on the next agenda and have the CAO report back on how they can begin implementing this and take it over.
So you want to continue this?
Continue this item and schedule it for the CAO to report back to us on the next agenda.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. With that, let's go to the next item is item 3. I'm sorry?
2.
Oh, that was
That was 1.
that was 1. Yeah, we'll go to item 2. That's fine. Item 2, recommendations on amendments to the fire code regarding homeowners and contractors' requirements for brush clearance. Yes. And then we have a card on 2. Carol, you want to come on up? Thank you for your patience.
Can you all hear me?
Being here.
My first time here.
Welcome.
Very excited.
All right. Thank you for being here.
That's not my first time at any committee meeting.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, come on up.
Good morning to the council. My name is Patrick.
If we could, before, let me go to public comment first.
Oh, sure.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you all. We've submitted a motion, a response to this item. Speaking of years, we've been waiting 8. In 2009, Councilman Koretz put forth a motion regarding brush clearance and the mandatory use of fire suppression equipment. Under the guidance of our great leader, Council District 4, David Rue, and Paul Koretz, it's back on the table. It's a simple motion. It asks for the recommendations from the fire department and the city attorney's office, who has sat on this for 8 years, to recommend what type of fire suppression equipment should be required when brush clearance is being done. We who live in the hillsides of LA, and most of you have hillsides in your various council districts, have waited and have been fortunate, but for how long? I just need one more minute.
I can't give you a minute. I have to treat everybody equally.
I would suggest that you watch the...
This is what I can do. If you have something in writing already, actually you can submit it so we can all read it.
Yeah, it was already submitted.
Okay,
I believe
we'll have it circulated.
It should be Sharon
Okay,
Dickinson.
thank you very much.
has it.
Thank you. And then, thank you very much. So you can go have a seat. Thank you. Thanks for being here as well. So I just got to, everybody's treated equally on the rules. I can't change them for one particular person. Morning.
Good morning, Council Member. On behalf of Council Member Koretz, thank you for having us here this morning. Before I start, I just wanted to throw a shout out to LAPD. Last night we had multiple incidents in Council District 5. We were out on scene until 1 or 2 in the morning. Captain Carmona, Captain Cortez, and then I ran out to West LA, Captain McCraney out of Wilshire. We had multiple incidents. LAPD handled them all swiftly, and we want to say thank you to them. This is a motion that is very important to Councilmember Koretz. We've been working on this for countless years. This year we hit a peak. We had multiple incidents on the border of Council District 5 as well as in Council District 5. We had a major fire in Councilmember Bonin's district off of Mandeville, which our office also responded to, and we also had another major incident off of Roscoe-Mare. The incidents that I don't like to get called out to is fire. A crime scene is one and done within a few minutes. A fire is a very, very scary situation because of the fact that the fire continues and homes are in jeopardy and lives continue to be in jeopardy. Our fire department does a great job, but both of these fires that we had this year were off of weed whackers. So the council member would like to see this move forward with extinguishing equipment for those who operate these. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right.
Good morning to the council. My name is Patrick Hayden, and I'm the section commander over the commercial industrial section of the fire department. And part of what I have under my direct responsibility is the brush clearance unit. So first and foremost, I want to thank both of the speakers for really framing the issues quite well. So what I'd like to do is sort of just make sure, as Ms. Sidlow sort of characterized, make this a slam dunk. So first and foremost, the fire department leaned forward on this issue quite some time ago. With that, we have a contractor's checklist for all of our contracted, LA City contracted contractors to make sure that they follow very specific rules and guidelines as it relates to safety. And we did present and provide that for you all. I'll just go down very briefly and explain some of the checklist issues here, and I think those really speak to the heart of why we're here today. First and foremost is we provide a CHP certificate, or rather require that the contractors provide a CHP certificate, and what that allows is for their vehicles to have been deemed safe by our CHP partners. That's very significant because we have had fires in the past related to vehicles in the brush areas. We also require that they have a 2A class fire extinguisher, minimum of 2.5-gallon water extinguisher, that is, and it must be carried in each vehicle. I think we should go a step further. By the time they go to the vehicle and actually are able to get hands on that extinguisher, it may be too late. So we may want to change, and as a matter of fact, I will make those changes within our checklist to make sure that they keep that in close proximity at all times. In addition to that,
can you define close proximity in your guidelines?
I will define that. Yeah, very clearly. And what we'll also do, just to as an aside, since you did ask about the verbiage that will be included, we'll work very closely with the city attorney so that we're able to come up with some verbiage for fire code changes. Those fire code changes are important because really it comes down to we can provide all of the direction, guidelines, and instructions to both contractors as well as homeowners, but without the teeth of an enforcement component, a fire code change, it's really for naught because we can't actually enforce. So I would recommend that we also provide a minimum for a 60B dry chem fire extinguisher, provide for a first aid kit, personal safety equipment, which we can also spell out, and there's a litany of other safety measures that we can have in place. But again, those really point to the issues at hand.
Thank you very much. Mr. Root, did you want to add something to this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for scheduling and considering this motion. And I really want to thank Carol Sidlow from my neighborhoods. She is a hawk on this issue as well as many other hillside issues. You know, thank you for framing this as well. I mean, 2 weeks, and I want to thank Council District 5. I don't know if he's still here for presenting it, because just 2 weeks ago, LAFD, County Fire, Burbank Fire, and Glendale Fire all responded to a brush fire at Griffith Park near the old LA Zoo, which was actually almost at the same time when we were doing Shakespeare in the Park. But luckily, all our firefighters were on the scene and put it out immediately. And there were many, many families and children picnicking nearby, and without these swift responses from these entities, that the situation could have been a lot worse. But this motion, as stated, is about preventing those types of fires in the first place. And unfortunately, far too often, the very equipment that the homeowners and the contractors are using to clear the brush are creating the fires themselves. And each year, of course, LAFD inspects more than 130,000 parcels located in the city's very high fire severity zones. But hopefully this effort that we're doing here today to update the codes and make it more restrictive will enhance the safety of our hillsides and ease the yearly burden of our emergency responders. Finally, I really want to thank the CD4 community, like Carol Sidlow, for being vigilant and being forward-thinking on this issue as they have been. So I really thank you for agendizing this, and if we can move it forward to the council.
Great. Okay.
May I respond, or are we going to move forward?
Yeah, we'll move forward.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
I'd just like to respond with one thing, just
Sure.
because I think this is a very key component that needs to be considered. First and foremost, it's actually 140,000 parcels, so I don't want you to cheat me out of the 10,000. So with regard to what we're doing internally, we also have a website, and with that website, what we've done is we've been able to send out direct affidavits to all 140,000 homeowners or thereabouts. And with that, we've also received very specific data with regard to how they've elected to respond to those affidavits. With those affidavits, we were able to capture at least 37,000 online registrants. Those online registrants can be provided all of the safety checklists, certification requirements, and we can begin to lean forward long before this motion is even in place. And that's something, again, that the fire department is going to aggressively pursue. Because it falls under my section, we'll take care of that.
Appreciate that. And then I have a question to follow up with you,
Sure.
but I can do it offline. So if you can get with my staff real quick, just to get your immediate direct contact or cell number that I can call you right after the
Appreciate
committee
that.
meeting.
Yeah, so I want to thank you all very much. It's been 9 years, and we really like to see this move forward.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so we'll go ahead and move this on to the council. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and go into item 6.
Item 6 are reports from the mayor and the city CAO's office regarding the fiscal year 2017 Urban Area Security Initiative Grant.
Hello. Morning. Morning. So I saw that this was just recently updated just a few days ago. It says August 18th on the UASI grant, on the report online. So I just wanted to ask on, am I wrong? I'm looking at it now. on council file index. So if you can walk us through where the money's being spent and how, what's the actual equipment?
Sure. Caitlin Ishigoko with the Mayor's Office of Public Safety. So this is our UASI FY17 grant from the Department of Homeland Security. Every year we allocate funds to particular investment areas as outlined in the report, including the interoperable communications as you see in Investment 1, as well as...
How much is that?
This year it was...
No, into the interoperable equipment you're talking about?
This year it was approximately $42 million.
And what's the equipment list? I didn't see an attachment.
I'm happy to provide you with the attachment. I believe it was listed in the report, but primarily the funds are going towards our LA RIC system, which has been a recipient of the funds since the beginning of the project. So the majority, I believe about $34 million, is towards the purchase of equipment and installation for their sites. This year, LAPD is also receiving an allocation of approximately $8.85 for the upgrade to their system.
So it didn't have any attachments on specifically, because those were, as you recall, very controversial issues of where the installations were happening. I don't want to be caught off guard. So if we could, and I've asked in the past that the equipment list and or locations and specific installations be attached to the grant funding, as they would any other funding.
Okay.
But for whatever reason, often on the grant funding, they're not. Because we're, in essence, not just approving funds, we're also approving the installation and acquisition of equipment, because it's assumed by accepting the funds, then we do that. And that's where things get sideways sometimes, and we just want to make sure we're on the same page. So since this was just updated and it's new, won't we go ahead and hold it in committee until we can get those documents? I'm happy to waive it out of committee if I am actually able to see if my colleagues are comfortable with that we have the backup documentation of exactly what we're talking about purchasing.
And if I could ask, this is actually the transmittal for the application, and we are about to submit an acceptance application,
Right.
which will always, which does include additional detail, and I'm happy to provide that detail at this time. This helps us with our application to move it forward.
Right.
Is there a possibility that we would be able to provide that additional detail during our acceptance transmittal to the council?
I would always ask that it be provided then. But if we're asking to submit, but we don't know what we're submitting for, so with specifics, it's a concern.
I understand. I'm happy to provide that.
So, okay. So as soon as we get that, then we'll either have it back in committee and or waive it to go to council.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Just a quick question.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, does this in any way include Mount Lee as well, or is it?
We don't know.
I would have to
We
check
don't
with the list and verify that. I'm happy to.
Thank you.
That's my point. We don't know what. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. The next item, we'll go ahead and go into item 3. We've got one speaker card. Mr. White again, thank you for your patience. And we have no other cards on any other items that haven't been submitted. We have to take the cards before we start the item, and so we'll close general public comment as well as any cards on any other items at this time. Thank you.
So, 5611 is simply another tool used to banish people from communities, which they have every right to be. It joins 4118D, 647J, 8502, and the rest of the tools used for this purpose of banishment. Los Angeles has lost in every attempt to defend the application of these so-called quality of life violations. Local courts, appellate courts, and the Supreme Court have all disagreed. And the city of Los Angeles continues to pay out tons of dollars for the violation of people's civil and human rights. So here we are again. The version of 5611, this version, is simply another lawsuit awaiting a plaintiff. The sentiment that exudes, that I feel in this space, is akin to what is emanating from 1600 Pennsylvania. Alt facts, outright lies, racial And as you run out the door again, I say get it together. 5611 must go.
Hi there, Jed Perriott. 5611 amounts to sanitation through criminalization. That's it. That's what you're doing here with this. And now you're looking out for the superficial needs of the wealthy who don't want to look at what they call blight, which are people, at the expense of material needs for those who are homeless. Thousands of people homeless in the street. You work for them too. I just want to remind you that. You work for them too. They're citizens. They have rights. They have human rights. And I don't see how this is going to help them. It's going to hurt them. In every way, no matter how you amend it, there's going to be citations given, arrests made, potentially lives lost because of this. Lost in the system, lost in other ways. And this is all because property owners don't want to see the reality, the negative effects of the economic system we live in. Please do not enforce this.
Thank you. Seeing as there are no other cards on the item, did we read the item already? No. Please do.
Item number 3 is a verbal report from the police department and the city attorney's office relative to the enforcement of Los Angeles Municipal Code section 56.11.
Thank you. We have a presentation from the city attorney's office and the Los Angeles Police Department. Welcome, Commander Chamberlain.
Good morning. How are you?
Welcome, Ms. O'Neill. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, just to give you an update real quickly from law enforcement's perspective and the LAPD's perspective on 5611. Obviously, 5611 came from a number of different things. Obviously, it started with 4118D, which was instituted, which allowed tents to stay up. And then at the point where our officers had to make contact with individuals to have tents broke down, that in turn went into Levon and to Jones based upon how officers were handling individuals' properties. And then ultimately Mitchell came into part of that. With Mitchell, then it became an opportunity or a time to look at other alternatives, and one of those alternatives was 5611 LAMC. 5611 is primarily based on sanitation, taking on the role of responsibility, and they do an incredible job. And as you can see, the issues not only with the homeless population, but also the issues related to the amount of items that are with the homeless population has become a huge concern, not just for the city at large, for the communities that are impacted, but also for the homeless individuals as well. There's encampments that go on literally for 3/4 of a mile sometime. There's multiple issues that go on within those encampments. And with that, there was a manner of how can we effectively, ethically, and constitutionally deal with that problem. For LAPD, again, we are only one point of that implementation of 5611. A lot of the responsibility falls onto the shoulders of sanitation. For us, we have the opportunity to work with issuing citations or doing in-custody arrest. To give you an idea on where we were at, in 2016, as far as citations, we issued 164 citations related to 5611. In 2017, we have issued 753 citations as we went through about a year period of education, of talking to individuals in homeless encampments, talking to our homeless population, educating them specifically about what 5611 is, about the need for the cleanups, the property, the items. And ultimately, we ended up now with a 2-year period. We have a total of 917. For us, that's a 78% increase in the number of 5611 citations and items that have been given. Our biggest struggles, without question, in law enforcement, one is the HOPE teams have the capability when they are implementing and working with sanitation to actually have an impact on the amount of items, the amount of trash, the biohazards, the things that are out there because they have the subject matter expertise of sanitation. For the routine patrol officer, if they go up to somebody that's in an encampment, the thing that they are struggling with, the thing that is without question our Achilles heel, is what do we do with the property? What does an officer do with that property when he doesn't have the subject matter expertise of sanitation to guide them, direct them, tell them this is a biohazard, this is not a biohazard, this can be taken, this cannot be taken. And then also we were running into the same issue with storage. where can an officer who is going from call to call to call stop, make contact with somebody in the homeless population, look at the encampment, say I'm going to issue a citation, and then take the tent down, and then what do we do with all this stuff? Storage has always been our hugest problem. It is without question, like I mentioned, our Achilles heel as far as what we are going to do. Both voluntary storage and involuntary storage is the big part of that. So that in a nutshell is where we're at. Our HOPE teams, one thing in regards to a HOPE team is that they have definitely been attempting and striving to have an impact on this. The majority of citations that you're going to see that are related to 5611 come from Central and from Hollywood, which are the two of the most dense populations. Also, Rampart area, they have a number of citations. Our HOPE teams, again, just to give you a recap on that and how that incorporates in with the 5611. The HOPE teams have been around since April, so it's been over a little bit about 1 year, 6 months that they've been out and about. Again, there is a finite number of officers that are involved. We only have 38 officers that are involved in the HOPE team, so it's not a huge number. But however, with that number, they've been able to make contact with 14,278 individuals that are homeless. I can guarantee you that without those 38 officers out doing that job, that number of contacts, that number of interventions, that number of relationships, that number of enforcement options would never have been exploited if it was solely left on the shoulders of our patrol officers or some other type of detail. So again, with that, the struggles that we see, the threats that we see with 5611, again, is the filing rate and what happens with that. There's been a few that have been actually in custody arrest during the 5611 after numerous warnings, after numerous times of education, and after numerous times of citation. So I think we've had a total of 5. A number of those have not been filed, and I'm going to leave that up to our district attorney, or our city attorney, and they can kind of go a little bit into that.
Gita O'Neill, Assistant City Attorney for the City Attorney's Office. As you may know, there's a couple different options that an officer can take when they see a 5611 violation. The most common, as you've heard, is doing a direct citation, which bypasses prosecutors completely and goes directly to the court. Our office has received 9 cases total for misdemeanor filing, meaning that then we would proceed with a misdemeanor filing, go to court, get probation conditions, and what have you. We've had 7 pleas, so it's an 8% rate, and we've had 2 rejects out of all those cases. When they are in court, we usually, again, then offer services. A lot of times, LASA will come to court with us to also cement the fact that we are trying to get people into housing. There isn't anything we can do if they don't take that offer, but we do try and always attempt that. As you also may know, the neighborhood prosecutors do roll call training. We have, in every police division, we try and hit every roll call to remind them of the different code sections for 5611, because while it's a very long section, there is only basically 2 sections LAPD could really write on without the assistance of sanitation, and those are just tents and attachments. The vast majority of the section is for sanitation and for notices and post-removal cleanups. So it's a small section. So we do roll call training, we answer questions.
So and I really do appreciate the overview. I know we're all chomping at the bit and looking at the clock. This is a multi-hour probably conversation. Let me just add to that, because I know all of my colleagues are incredibly interested in this, and we have a lot of questions and probably a lot of ideas and thoughts as well. And I would also suggest that we have sanitation sitting here because they are the backbone for this program and for 5611. With that, before I jump over to my colleagues, and I think everybody knows what it is and how it's implemented. We thank you all, because we know at the end of the day, it's actually very soft and hard to enforce, and it's very complicated because our officers are out there, as you said, and you've put up what some of the complications are. But even with our HOPE teams, you got a 24-hour notice requirement. So when they go out there and say you've got to remove these things, and the people remove it, then they go back the next day, it's back. Well, they have to just tell them again, you've got to remove it. So instead of a 24-hour one time, it should be a 72-hour perhaps. Like, that warning is good for 72 hours, not just 24 hours. So that's an issue. So clearly there's some issues that need to be ironed out, but the biggest thing that I hear is more funding, more HOPE teams, permanent HOPE teams, coupled with sanitation and rapid response, all together every day. that's really, I think, where we're probably going to end up going in terms of conversation. So I want to open it up to my colleagues, and what I'd like to do, and I'm going to propose that we have a scheduled Public Safety Committee meeting just on this.
Yes.
And this is the only topic.
We need to.
And that's it. And it's going to happen right away. And so I'm going to propose that we do that with sanitation and with our HOPE teams. And we'd like to have the HOPE teams here. And I'd like to also invite some of the senior leads because they are the connection to this as well. And they're the first responders on this issue. And I think that's community organizations are always welcome and will be here for that input as well. So thank you for sharing that, Mr. White. Thank you. So with that, if I could, we do have another item on the agenda. Stay right here, though. And on that other item, what I'd propose is we actually move that to the council because we were going to actually go into closed session on that item. I know there are a number of people here, but that's probably an item that the entire council needs to discuss in closed session as well. And it's timely and critically important, and I don't want to hold that up, and I want everyone on the council to weigh in on that item. So let's go ahead and move that item to council without discussion here.
Were you talking about that item? Which item?
4.
4.
Not this item.
Okay.
Yeah, 4.
But I have just one
So
comment.
let's go. We're going to go back to this, but I know there are people here on 4, so I just want to let you know we're going to move that to council. We'll agendize it in council for possible closed session. I will go into closed session in council on that and want everybody to have a full discussion on that. That's timely and critical. So let's go back to this. Mr. O'Farrell.
Just real quickly, I know that we're looking at the clock here. Mr. Chair, I believe that if it is observed that sidewalks are completely blocked and impassable for whatever reason, that an order to comply with providing right-of-way is immediate. I don't think there needs to be a 72-hour notice or a notice of any kind. I think the order is the sidewalks must be cleared and become passable. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
And so, thank you. And so I know in my district, when I speak with the senior lead officers, all the captains, I'm all about just making sure that the sidewalks are passable. We had a situation in the last year and a half or so where on Glendale Boulevard, a sidewalk was completely blocked. People in wheelchairs, moms were pushing strollers down Glendale Boulevard, where traffic sometimes hits 50 miles an hour, to avoid encampments. And so we got that under control. Now, that to me is the basic, let's at least make sure that that happens on our public rights of way so that we can keep the sidewalks clear. Secondly, it is my understanding from just talking with police officers and some in sanitation that there is some hand-wringing with city leadership in terms of enforcement of 5611. I'm just going to state that for the record. There's no hand-wringing with me. I want 5611 enforced in the 13th District. I've made that loud and clear. It's not about victimizing those who are homeless. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm just talking about keeping our rights of way free and clear and passable. So I look forward to this longer discussion, and those are some of the points that I wanted to make just for today. And I know you all have an incredible challenge with this, and I think we all have your back. And I look forward to talking about how we can help make our HOPE teams successful, because I think with the limited number of HOPE teams that we have, we are unwittingly setting them up to fail. And we need to set up the HOPE teams in a way that actually results in success. And success can be measured by getting people into housing. Thank you.
No, thank you for that. And just colleagues, so you know, what I'm planning on doing is not having a regular scheduled public safety committee for this, is a special, so we can do it as soon as possible. So I'll get with your calendars and we'll just schedule it, and I don't want to wait.
Mr. Chair, as Councilman Rodriguez was talking about, I think sanitation is utterly crucial.
Yes.
Do we need to make it even a joint with Public
meeting
Works?
with Public Works,
Or is just calling sanitation?
We don't. We could just call it sanitation.
Okay.
I mean, we don't.
City Attorney's Office, sanitation.
Sanitation is just so...
Yeah, I think that's fine. And timing is so important. With school back in session as well, it's even more complicated for kids walking to school, and it's everywhere. So we'll do that for sure.
No, I agree, and I appreciate you taking on that leadership role and calling it special. And I too agree with Mr. O'Farrell that all public right-of-ways are public, and they are meant for everyone. In fact, clearly, 5611 is not being enforced in parts of the city. A recent tweet by Captain Reyna indicated on August 21st, once again, a gang member under the guise of being homeless was preying on the vulnerable in Skid Row. Arrest made, pictures of a tent erected clearly during daylight hours in violation of 5611, and a photo of cash, dope, guns, and ammunition. Again, you see these gangsters and dealers who are preying on the most vulnerable, those who need the help. I appreciate there's a lot of frustrations out there, but again, we have to do everything we can to keep our public right-of-ways public, and looking forward to the special. But while I have you here, Commander, in the City Attorney's Office, are there ways of being more, in looking at what's taking place on social media, in response to, these key arrests and also the concerns from the residents? Any ways to be more proactive about enforcing 5611? And secondly, why do you think we are still seeing a huge amount of issue with homeless property in our public areas, and how can we address the property issue?
Well, I think the reason we're seeing a huge amount of homeless property, again, is because we definitely have an increase in our homeless population. The Lossaw count last time, it went up about 25%, so I think we're looking at about 36,000 individuals who are homeless. For law enforcement, again, when the HOPE teams were constructed and made, ours was based on the idea of being able to go out and provide multiple services with individuals, which include Lossaw outreach, sanitation cleanups as necessary, and then ultimately law enforcement if that's something that has to be done. But again, I think that the biggest issue are some of the legal constraints that the department has been confronted with. When you look at Mitchell and you look at Jones and LeVon, it's very difficult for an officer to make that determination to clean, to not to clean, based upon those lawsuits that are hanging over the city's head.
Maybe these attorneys can follow Captain Reyna on Twitter.
Yeah. And I'm sure they do, and I don't think anybody's naive, obviously. For us, again, the big part is that we wanted to educate our officers about what they could and could not do with.
Well, you might want to also reach out to some of our senior leads and the others that are also on social media saying, well, it's the city that is not allowing us to do anything about this, and contact your city leaders. As the chair of public safety, I see that fortunately a lot of, I think the senior leads in my area get it. We've got great relationships, but those are the ones who are most active, and they're the most frustrated because they're the point people on the ground. Not only, like, the difference between them and the HOPE teams are the senior leads are actually going to neighborhood council meetings and going to various functions, and they're the public face of LAPD and of the city. And they, fortunately, thank God, we've got phenomenal senior leads citywide that are passionate and they get it. But they're also probably some of the most frustrated. And so it comes out a lot on social media and other places that, well, it's really our city leaders, but it's not. It's a combination of, and I don't care who gets blamed for this. The issue is it's all of ours. We all, it's the buck stops here. There's no doubt. But we need to bring everybody in to say, okay, fine. What changes do you need? Where do we go with this? What more funding needs to take place? We've got to turn this around. We're at the edge. We've gone over the cliff. We're not even at the edge of the cliff. This is the worst crisis we've ever seen in our lifetime by far. And so that's why it's going to require beyond special attention. And it's not enforcing our way out of it. It's not funding our way out of it. It's not building housing our way out of it. It's dealing with the specific problems that are, and maybe a combination of all of those things, but there's not any one solution. But before us is 5611, and we get what those problems are. We know that you guys are up against a wall. There's no doubt. But we've got to be the ones to provide the solutions, not just point the finger. We have to step up and say, okay, tell us where you need help to fix it. Why isn't it being forced? Then let's solve that problem. If it's a storage issue, it's easily solvable. It's not that complicated.
We need 15 storage facilities.
No, we do not. Actually,
and in order to maximize the enforcement of 5611,
we absolutely,
that's what I'm hearing.
We absolutely don't. But there's no reason.
One in each council district.
No, we don't. They said that we needed one every 2 miles. That's not true either. That's what the court decided. Why not have a portable mobile solution that drives around and picks it up and can drop it off? There's other ways, which, by the way, we've gone out and tested and looked at, and we're ready to launch a pilot on that. We've got vendors chomping at the bit to do it. So there are much easier, cheaper solutions than bins on every corner. And it's a matter of prioritizing this conversation.
Plus, I think also working with individuals who are homeless, who will by and large, if they are encouraged to keep the rights of way that they're adjacent to clear, they will comply. And just interacting, which doesn't always mean you have to pull up a truck and haul a bunch of stuff away. Just all I ask at the moment is the basics. Let's not overthink it. Let's just keep our rights of way clear and clean. The overwhelming majority of folks who are homeless will comply if they are interacted with to do so. And that's just the basics that we can do. If we overthink it and think that we have to identify all of these other resources just to keep the sidewalks clear, then we've overthought it to the point of we can't even navigate through a door to keep our sidewalks free and clear. So we absolutely need those solutions. We do need them. But we need the immediate solutions of interacting with our homeless population so that they will willingly comply. And then if things are discarded, I mean, I'll go out to an encampment and someone will say, you know what, I'm done with this, take this away. We'll arrange for a truck. We'll haul it away. We'll leave the area and the sidewalk is clear. So it's also just interacting with other human beings on this solution, the immediate solution. Long-term solution you talked about, Mr. Chair, providing housing. Make sure that HHH and H and other resources that we can provide adequate housing in the long term happens. We need the counseling and intervention and conversations with homeless individuals to strongly compel folks to accept a roof over their heads. And that takes a lot of work because there's so much victimization out there. So many reasons for people to become homeless. So it's never an easy solution, but it will take a concentrated, relentless effort. And this is just part of it.
If I can, to piggyback on Mr. O'Farrell's comments, Mr. Chair, I think part of the compliance issue is that we're not seeing someone on site at these courts. And to the city attorney, 917 direct sites, that goes straight to the courts, not to your office. And Nicole Daring, who's my constituent services manager, recommends, and who's on this issue I know daily, is why don't we have a LAHSA representative at the court so that when they come in to address a 5611 citation, we're offering a service, we're offering housing, offering a voucher, so that they're not wrapped up into the ongoing issues of quality of life, storage problems, so that we have someone on the ground. Is that possible?
It is up to LAHSA to fund that would be great. We have someone who comes in for LAHSA to our misdemeanor cases, and we have to beg and borrow to get them to come because of their staffing issues. It's a great idea to provide people services when they're in court. They're sitting there anyway waiting for their case to be called. Right. It's a great time.
You negotiate with the judge.
Exactly. So it really does come from LAHSA or some service provider funding that in the courthouse. We have a Navigator program.
Can we use HHH dollars to fund something, a court referral?
No, HHH is usually for brick and mortar type of buildings.
H then.
H,
the
right.
other one.
So Measure H money is mostly going through LAHSA and DHS.
Okay.
So from those budgets, they could pull something like that. I know that they're all strained because everyone's trying to compete for the same dollars, but it's a great way when people are in court to get them services. Our office started a Navigator program with a similar idea in mind for certain defendants. Ms. Larson before spoke about, she's involved in that. It's in the downtown courthouse, and it's just starting in Van Nuys Courthouse in, I think, next week. So it's similar to that kind of strain of like, people are here, let's get them services while they're here.
I'd like to see something at the Long Beach Courthouse as well. That encompasses the southern area of the city.
Definitely.
Ms. Rodriguez.
And when we come back with sanitation, it would be great to also look at the calendaring system for cleanups. Would be great too.
Yeah, now I look forward to a deeper dive on this conversation. There's so much, just the human element of how we need to outreach to these individuals to make sure that they're serviced. And so oftentimes we can appoint someone to be at the courts, but the reality is that these are human beings that require much more depth in connecting with them in order to help facilitate them getting the services that they need. So there's a number of issues that we are confronted with. I know with sanitation it's going to be incredibly important, and I'm already thinking of a number of ideas that we could perhaps help encourage some more vigorous efforts with resources that are available, just to help make sure that the kids in my district don't have to, they cannot pass to get to school. Mm-hmm. There are a number of circumstances, and we have to address the populations based on who we're dealing with. We can't paint them all with the same broad brush. There's a number of dynamics that we're all confronted with, and I just look forward to a deeper dive in this conversation.
I appreciate
and thank you for your work on that.
Absolutely true. So what we'll do is, colleagues, we'll go ahead and put together a special committee meeting, and rather than do it before a council meeting, I'd rather do it after a council meeting, and that way we don't have a clock of conversation, and it's unlimited. And so we'll go ahead and do that. Really thank you guys for being here. We welcome you back. It'll be very short notice, so we'll let you know and keep you posted. That concludes the agenda, I believe, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks.